Welcome to this explainer. Today we're embarking on a pretty profound philosophical journey. We're going to unpack the teachings of Yasser Al-Hazimi, specifically looking at the art of self-discovery and the quiet but honestly often overlooked power of gradual change. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by the pressure to just, completely reinvent yourself overnight, yeah, you're in exactly the right place. So, let's dive right into this.
I want to start by asking you a question. Are you actually moving forward, or are you just exhausting yourself resisting the current? Al-Hazimi uses this brilliant analogy here. Picture a duck sitting on a river. From the surface, it looks completely stable, right? Perfectly still. But underneath the water, its feet are paddling furiously just to fight the current and stay in one single place. Honestly, a lot of us live exactly like that. We spend massive amounts of energy trying to stay exactly where we are, totally exhausted by this chaotic lack of direction. True progress, though, that requires a completely different kind of energy.
Okay, Section 1. Mapping the self, the anatomy of you.
To stop fighting the current and actually start moving, we first need to understand what we're trying to move in the first place. See, the self isn't just this one giant, immovable block. It's actually a really complex anatomy made up of 8 interconnected dimensions. We've got the spiritual, mental, psychological, social, physical, financial, career, and skills dimensions. When people fail at self-improvement, it's usually because they try to change this entire list all at once, and it's just way too much. The real secret to changing your life is realizing that you don't change your whole self, you simply tweak specific aspects within these distinct areas.
But where do you even start? Well, the absolutely crucial point here is to treat the dimension that is bleeding. Al-Hazimi draws on prophetic wisdom regarding debt to really illustrate this. Imagine financial ruin as a literally bleeding dimension. If you're drowning in debt, that financial bleeding is inevitably going to infect your social life, it's going to trigger anxiety that just wrecks your mental health, and eventually it drains your spiritual peace. You have to stop the active bleeding first before you try to optimize anything else.
Moving right along to Section 2, the power of the micro. The olive theory. Once you've figured out which area needs your attention, how do you actually fix it without getting totally overwhelmed again? Well, back in 1986, an American airline was facing bankruptcy. They called this massive emergency meeting to figure out how to save the company. People were suggesting firing staff, jacking up ticket prices, but one person had a very different idea. $120,000. That is exactly how much this airline saved. But here's the crazy part. They didn't lay off a single employee to do it. They saved all that money simply by removing a single olive from every passenger's salad. Seriously, nobody noticed the missing olive. It didn't affect the quality of the flight at all. But on a macro scale, that tiny little removal saved the entire company from going under.
And this brilliantly illustrates our core lesson for today. Massive transformations, they do not require massive, exhausting actions. They require small, almost imperceptible micro-changes. Think about it. An olive with an olive makes a difference. A mountain is really just a bunch of rocks. When you compound tiny, painless adjustments over time, you build something completely unshakable.
Which brings us to Section 3, the strategy, which is start, continue, stop.
So how do we actually apply this olive theory to our own lives? Like, how do we make those micro-changes across our 8 dimensions? Well, Al-Hazimi offers this highly practical, beautifully stress-free framework. It relies on 3 simple boundaries: start, continue, and stop. Let's say your bleeding dimension is your physical health. You just place 3 simple boundaries around it. Start, walking for 10 minutes a day. Continue, eating a good breakfast because, hey, you already do that well. Stop, eating sugary snacks after 9 p.m. See how that works? You aren't overturning your entire life. You're just removing one olive and adding a simple new one. It elegantly rebuilds any dimension without paralyzing you with that awful feeling of overwhelm.
All right, Section 4, the engine of change, looking at focus, stability, and consistency. Now, knowing what to change is fantastic, but let's be real. A car without an engine just won't drive. You need a mechanism to actually power this change. Think about sunlight. It's incredibly powerful, but scattered sunlight won't burn anything. It just warms your skin. To actually create fire, you need 3 specific steps. Step 1, you have to focus the light through a lens. Step 2, you have to hold that lens completely stable, because if your hand is shaking all over the place, nothing happens. And step 3, you must keep it there consistently over time. Focus, stability, and consistency. That right there is the engine that sparks the fire of real, lasting change in your habits.
As the quote goes, the bet is always on continuity. A little that is continuous is better than a lot that is interrupted. In our modern hustle culture, we're constantly taught to just go all out, right? To burn ourselves out with massive, short-lived efforts. But sustainable, prophetic wisdom teaches the exact opposite. A small, permanent habit, just one steady ray of focused light, will always defeat a sudden chaotic explosion of effort that just fades away after a week.
Let's move to Section 5, Reframing the Impossible.
But of course, the exact moment you decide to focus your light, internal resistance kicks in. You know that little voice in your head that says, I can't do this, there's no way, it's impossible? Well, when that internal resistance pops up, we should look at the philosophy of the scholar Al-Rafidi. He actually splits the idea of the impossible into two distinct categories. First, there's the universal impossible. These are things that physically cannot be done by anyone, like surviving a trip to the surface of the sun or literally being in two physical places at the exact same time. But then there is the personal impossible. Things like learning an incredibly difficult language, memorizing a huge book, or breaking a lifelong habit. These things aren't actually impossible. They just feel impossible to you simply because you haven't yet walked the path toward them.
If you need proof that the personal impossible is really just an illusion, just look at the story of Imam al-Muzani. When he was young, his own uncle told him he was utterly unfit for seeking knowledge and should just give up and find a simple trade. I'm sure it felt totally impossible for him. But al-Muzani persisted with small, consistent, focused steps, and he eventually became a towering scholar. Years later, looking at the massive crowds gathered just to learn from him, he reflected that if his uncle were alive, he would have to take back his words. It's a powerful reminder. Human judgment never, ever overrides divine potential.
And finally, Section 6, the culmination, where we compare success versus spiritual fulfillment. As we steer our lives through all these changes, we really have to know what our ultimate destination is. Consider the concept of Falah, which translates to true fulfillment. See, when human beings were placed on this earth, we left our original home, paradise. A lot of the anxiety and aimlessness we feel in our daily life is really just the panic of being lost, of not knowing the way back. Falah is the profound peace of finally finding the road that leads back to your spiritual home. It's about achieving what the Creator wants from you, basically aligning every single earthly step with that ultimate return journey.
There's a stark, unavoidable contrast between two paths here. Najah is mere worldly success. It means getting what you want. You know, the car, the big title, the money. Falah, on the other hand, is fulfillment, doing what God wants. If you dedicate your entire life to achieving the first, but you lose the second, you've ultimately lost everything. True victory is aligning what you want with what you were actually created to do. And achieving that alignment, it requires total honesty. The secret of success is the success in secret. This journey of self-discovery is deeply, deeply intimate. You aren't fixing your bleeding dimensions or applying the olive theory just so people will applaud you. You do it to reconcile your public narrative with your private reality, in the dark of night when no one else is watching. You change to find inner peace, to be a true benefit to your community, and most importantly, to please your Creator.
Which leaves us with one final essential thought for you to take away today. Are you merely chasing success, or are you finally ready to build a foundation for true fulfillment? Take a moment, just look inward, identify the dimension of your life that is bleeding the most right now, find just one small olive you can remove or add today, and begin your steady, focused journey home.